Welcome to Melrose Unitarian Universalist Church. Our service today is called Indigenous Americans, Myths, Truths, and Our Inheritance. I did it again. Good morning, everybody. It's good to see you. Hi. I am the Reverend Dr. Suzanne Trilligator. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I welcome you to worship this morning. Our goal here, as always, is not perfection, but connection to ourselves, to one another, and to the holy. I hope this service helps you connect. Helping me create that sense of connection today are some folks that I want to thank. First is Dan Griscom, who is today training our new worship technician, Bill Holt. Dan and Bill are back here behind the screen running the show. Good luck to Bill today. Hosting our chat space on Zoom is Erin Hoban-Audette. Good morning, Erin. And our in-person usher is Jenny Wengrovius. Hey, Jenny. Thank you all for helping us today. Much appreciated. I have just a couple of brief announcements. We have a full and fun October planned. Next Sunday, we'll be celebrating fall with a hybrid service about trees and how they communicate with each other and relate to one another. And then we'll have an outdoor worship service, the second one this year. It'll be all about leaves and the beauty of fall colors, and it will be very participatory. So I hope that many of you can come. It's going to be at 2 p.m. at a new location, Cedar Park, right down the street by the train station. A lot of parking there on Sundays, and I have a permit, so it's even legal. So I hope to see you there at 2. On the following Sunday, October 24th, we'll be exploring the proposed 8th principle of Unitarian Universalism, which calls us to undo oppressions like racism. That will be interesting. And then on Sunday, the 31st, well, we got to celebrate Halloween. We're going to have a service about monsters. And costumes will be optional, but very much encouraged. Folks who would like to join us in person are very welcome. See the sign-up sheet that's on the website or in your midweek update. We are happy to announce that we have made more spaces available here, so you don't have to limit your attendance to once a month. Sign up as often as you like, and we've got fancy new air filtration machines in 2 of the corners here. Yay! They remove dangerous particles from the air, and they promise to give us 4 complete air exchanges per hour. Woo! That should help us get through the winter once we have to close the windows. Yeah, so we'll do that. And now we are also wearing in the room KN95 masks. And with those 2 things, our safety team has decided that it is once again safe for us to sing, or safer. Don't say safe, but say safer. So we're going to sing today, which is super exciting, very exciting. Hallelujah. Folks here in the sanctuary, if you would like to share joys and sorrows with us today, we've discontinued the texting. That didn't work very well, but if you would like to write it down on a piece of paper, Jenny can pass paper to you now and a pen, and then we'll pass it forward, and they'll be read during joys and sorrows. And people online. Well, that's good to know. Just a quick reminder to the people at Zoom, it's only the worship leaders who end up appearing on the video recording, so you don't need to worry about that. So back to where we were. Our church sits on land belonging to the Massachusetts people. To help address that injustice, we ask you every week to support the Massachusetts Indigenous legislative agenda, which lobbies for Native justice at the state level. You can learn more about that by going to maindigenousagenda.org. Also, tonight and tomorrow, to help celebrate Melrose's first official Indigenous Peoples Day, local historian James Bennett will be giving 2 talks about the history of people in this area, one online and one in person. There's more information about that on our website at melroseuu.org. Now, it is time to greet one another. People here in the room can wave and shoot hugs at each other. People online can wave, switch to gallery view, and we can maybe see each other and wave and feel connected. It's time to say good morning. Good morning. Is it possible to see the grid? There's the grid. Wave to the grid. Hi, people. Good morning. Hi, everybody. It's so good to see all those smiling faces. Thank you. I call us to worship this morning with these words from Nancy Bright Sky Harris, who is a contemporary leader, singer, and dancer among the Nipmuc people of Massachusetts. She writes, "Grandmother Earth, Grandfather Sky, hear your people, calling in their prayers, in their dreams for direction. We want to see a new sunset, a new beginning for
Reverend Suzanne, we can't hear the sound online.
Did you all hear that prayer I did, or do you want to hear it again? You heard it. That's what I'm seeing. Okay.
I don't think we heard it online, Reverend Suzanne.
Okay, well, it's really short. So this is from Nancy Bright Sky Harris, a contemporary leader of the Nipmuc Nation of Massachusetts. She says, "Grandmother Earth, Grandfather Sky, hear your people calling in their prayers, in their dreams for direction. We want to see a new sunset, a new beginning for our children and of the next 7 generations to come. Guide us to the right path and let our moccasins follow in your steps. Aho." And now, along with UUs everywhere, we light the symbol of our faith, the flaming chalice. This morning, our chalice will be lit by board member and longtime church member Mary Ellen Fitzgibbon. She will also give us a reading to go with it.
Good morning. This reading is from the Unitarian minister A. Powell Davies. As minister of All Souls Church in Washington, D.C. in 1950s, Davies rose to national prominence both for his fight against McCarthyism and his work in civil rights. He wrote, "What are we, any of us, but strangers and sojourners, forlornly wandering through the nighttime until we draw together and find the meaning of our lives in one another, dissolving our fears in each other's courage, making music together, and lighting torches to guide us through the dark. May the light we kindle in our time together guide us once again through the dark and into the bright dawn of courage."
Thank you, Mary Ellen. This week, our music director, Tara Tresner-Kirsch, is celebrating her mother's birthday by visiting her in Connecticut. Standing in for Tara here in the sanctuary is the multi-talented vice president of the congregation, Jenny Wengrovius. While we watch the choir sing the hymn on the video screen, Jenny will lead folks here in the room to sing along. And to celebrate this special moment when we once again can sing together with each other in the sanctuary, we've chosen this lovely hymn, "Come Sing a Song with Me." Thanks, Jenny.
Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the wind. that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time.
Thank you, Jenny. Please be seated. And now let's join together in the words of our covenant, followed by the song of aspiration. Hey. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. This is our great covenant, one with another and with our God. Thank you. For our story today, Katie will tell us about how some young Indigenous women are sharing a traditional dance that they believe can help heal the world.
Today, we are going to be seeing a video called Art Heals, the Jingle Dress Project, started by the Tapahi family. Jingle dancers are Indigenous women and girls who are using a traditional dance to help the world heal during the pandemic, to heal the land of their spiritual ancestors, and to bring hope to the world. The dresses, also known as prayer dresses, mimic the sound of falling rain and bring a sense of peace. The tradition of the jingle dress dance began with the Ojibwe people of the Great Lakes region about 100 years ago during the flu pandemic of 1918. An Ojibwe medicine man's granddaughter had become very sick. As he worried about his granddaughter, the man had a dream of how to heal her. In his dream, Indigenous ancestors came to him as spiritual guides and instructed him on how to bring this practice of jingle dancing to life, how to perform the dance, how to make the dresses, what songs to play. When he awoke, he immediately got to work following the instructions of the women in his dream. It's said that his granddaughter was at first too weak to stand on her own, but as she participated in the jingle dance, she became stronger and was healed. Around this same time, the United States issued a ban on ritual dancing on reservations. The jingle dance ritual still spread from the Ojibwe to the Lakota and then other Native communities, and continues to be carried on today, as you are about to see.
My name is Erin Tapahi. I'm a member of the Navajo Nation, and we are part of the Art Heals the Jingle Dress project, and we're here in Minnesota for the purpose of dancing and healing.
The heart of our idea is to actually go out and to heal the land and heal the people. 100 years ago, the jingle dress dance originated with the Ojibwe people during the pandemic in 1918. And so we kind of feel like this is a great time for us to do what we're doing, and there's parallels between our project and that. So when we do go out to the lands, we're actually going to places where our ancestors have walked before. And so it makes us feel good when we go out there, because we're trying to also, along with the healing, we're also looking at it in the sense of the reclamation of native lands, reclaiming the land, and also we're there to heal the land, and we're there to heal the people that are supporting us, and also just all people in general during this pandemic.
I'm Brenda Child, a professor of American Studies and American Indian Studies at the University of Minnesota. I'm Red Lake Ojibwe, and I've been working on the history of the Ojibwe jingle dress dance tradition for quite a number of years now. I knew that the jingle dress was an Ojibwe tradition, and then it was kind of regional for many years. It was practiced by Ojibwe people of the Great Lakes of the United States and Canada, and then very quickly it moved to our Dakota neighbors. But it was sort of a regional tradition among Ojibwe and Dakota people until the later decades of the 20th century, when it became kind of a pan-Indian phenomenon.
I went to Standing Rock. That was where I had my calling to become a jingle dress dancer. And so ever since then, it's always been tied with my purpose of healing the land and healing those who are in need.
Every week, we pause together for a time of meditation, where each of us reflects in our own way. Let's start today by relaxing into our chairs, feeling our feet on the floor, letting our bodies settle. Let's breathe in and out together. To begin our meditation time, first we'll join in our centering song, then we will sit for a few minutes of shared silence. Then we will speak to one another of our joys and sorrows. Then I will offer a prayer. Our worship theme for October is cultivating relationship. And so our centering song for the whole month is How Could Anyone? Folks at home, feel free to sing along, as well as folks here in the sanctuary. After the song, we have 2 minutes of silence.
How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell
And now, our weekly practice of sharing with one another the joys and sorrows of our lives, our personal milestones, so that we may hold them in our compassion. First, if you have a sorrow to share today, please type it into the chat box on Zoom and I will read them, and/or you've given paper ones to Jenny. Jenny, you want to go first?
I actually would like you to do this one, please. Thank you.
This is a concern from Jenny. My best friend, Dean, has been diagnosed with terminal brain cancer. We hope he has years left, and he is determined to fight bravely. Sorry, Jenny. I'll give you a minute. I'll look at the ones online. Does anyone have a sorrow to share this morning? I don't see any sorrows. Would you like me to read those? No more sorrows today. Let us take a moment to hold that sorrow that we had and any other sorrows that remain unspoken. Let us reach out with compassion to all who are hurting today with our support and our help. We'll now light one candle as a beacon of care for all the sorrows, spoken and unspoken today. And now, does anyone have a joy to share? You want to go ahead?
All right, I have a joy from Cheryl Ringen. I just accepted the service unit coordinator position for Melrose Girl Scouts. We have a joy from Anna Ringen. I've been hanging out with some ninth graders. They treat me like I'm part of their group instead of a little kid. We have a joy, an anonymous joy, a prayer of hope, peace, promise to all who may be lonely or sad today. And then a second joy from Cheryl, seeing and hearing Reverend Suzanne greeting everyone today in service in person. Such an exciting sound.
And we have one joy from our Zoom audience, from Liz Tishoni. She writes, joy, a candle of joy for Craig, her husband, who is home and after a recent health scare. He's very healthy now, but it's been a scary week. We're glad he's back. And one from Camille, a joy for all who provided me love and support with my recent health issue. Thank you all. Let me just pause to ask Erin, our chat host, did I miss any joys or sorrows this week, Erin?
Nope, you've got them all.
Oh, good, thank you. So now let us pause. Just a moment of thanks for all who shared their joys this week. When you share joys, you help us connect with all the blessings in our lives and all the beauty of being alive. Thank you. So Jenny will light one more candle to shine out our thanks for all these many blessings. Thank you, Jenny. Please, would you join me in the spirit of prayer? In addition to all that we hold in our hearts today, our individual joys and sorrows and those of our collected community, I offer you this prayer that was written by Mike Adams, a member of the Los Alamos, New Mexico UU congregation, and also a member of the Lilwat Native people of Canada. Mike writes, for the generations who survived being hunted, who endured the theft and destruction of our people's lands, and who persevered through the theft of and indoctrination of our children. We are grateful that you survived and for the resilience you have passed on to us. Because you did these things, we are still here. For the activists who stood against corruption and who forced a spotlight onto our people's mistreatment, we are grateful for your commitment. Because of it, we are still here. For the people who never consented to the sacrifices that were forced from you, we remember you. We mourn your suffering and loss. We honor you as best we can. We do this because we are still here. For the future generations, we ask that you remember. We look to you to keep our people's future alive after we've gone. We ask you to find strength in your ancestors and use the resilience of your people to create your future and that of your children. We ask you to ensure that when we are gone, through you, we are still here. Amen. Now is the time for our weekly offertory. Our church is an independent community organization supported by your generous annual pledge. You may also contribute to our weekly collection plate, which we split every month with a deserving cause. You can donate either way using the orange button at the top right corner of our website at melroseuu.org, and folks here in the room can leave a donation on the table on your way out today. For October, our giving partner is Women for Afghan Women, a grassroots organization dedicated to protecting and promoting the rights of Afghan women and girls, especially their right to self-determination and political representation. For our offertory music this morning, I have something special. Our friend Kathy Kellier, a longtime member of this congregation, attended the UUA's General Assembly in 2020 when the whole conference was online, and together it examined the plight of the Indigenous American people. Kathy attended a workshop with Native historian Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz and then read her book, the UUA Common Read for that year, called An Indigenous People's History of the United States. Growing out of this experience, Kathy made a quilt about her love for this country and its original people. And she also wrote a song about this experience. In this video that I'll share with you now, Kathy performs the song with some help from her friend Beth Harris, and she uses the quilt to illustrate her words. Kathy told me yesterday, "I love this land, and I love how the Native peoples cared for it. We lost that when we destroyed that culture, and now it's so important that we regain all that knowledge. My song is about that grief." Here is This Land I Love by Kathy Kellier.
There will be a short pause.
I had a couple of hiccups with our videos this week, but it's there, and now we just need to make it bigger, and then we can play it.
This land I love is not just mine. It was loved before. It'll be loved again. It'll be loved again when I am gone. The grasses will grow, the waters will flow, the waters will flow, they'll sing their song. How I was here, and the ones before, and the ones before, they love this land. This land was theirs till it was taken away. It was taken away. They lost their land. This land they love. This land I love. This land I love is not just mine. It was loved before. It'll be loved again.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Kathy. First, a story. A middle-aged woman sat by the shore of the Mystic River, weeping. Her losses weighed on her, so heavy we can scarcely imagine. Her husband had died violently, and 2 of her 3 adult sons had also perished, taken by the same mysterious illness that had claimed most of her family and friends. And now this poor woman, enemies surrounded her, threatening to take what little she had left in this world. What would she do? How would she survive? The year was 1637, and this woman, believe it or not, was the Queen of Massachusetts. Though her actual personal name is lost to us now, she was known, according to local customs of respect, only by her title, Squaw Sachem of the Mystic, literally woman chief. Her husband was called Nanny Pashmet. He was a warrior who had consolidated all the tribes of this area and therefore had claim to the land all the way from Marblehead to Charlestown and all the way to Concord. When he died in battle, she took over leadership. But by then, their thousands had dwindled to just 40 people, killed mostly by disease, either smallpox or perhaps leptospirosis, while the English settlers here grew more and more numerous, and they wanted to take it all. What would Squaw Sachem do? If you grew up in this country like I did, you probably were raised with many, many myths about the native peoples of this land. We were taught that the natives were few in number, spread far apart, living like nomads in a great wilderness. They were uncivilized, they were savages, and so they were saved by the Europeans who came to settle this country, who discovered it and claimed it for their Christian God. Guided by a covenant with this God, these settlers supposedly called here to fulfill a manifest destiny. They had a divine mission to build a nation spanning from coast to coast. That is the myth, but what is the truth behind it? Tomorrow, the city of Melrose celebrates officially for the first time ever Indigenous Peoples Day instead of Columbus Day. It is an auspicious moment for all of us, a perfect time to examine these myths that we were taught and the truths that they were meant to hide. So let's look at some of these myths, maybe one at a time or two. First, I think, and most basic, let's look at the land itself. What did these first English settlers find when they landed right over there? Was it, as we were taught, a wilderness, sparsely populated? Well, no, actually, it was not. As I mentioned before, in 2019, the UUA declared our common read for the year, a book called An Indigenous Peoples' History of the United States, written by Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz, a part Indian woman who's also a professor, or was, at Cal State Hayward. In her chapter 1, called Follow the Corn, Dunbar Ortiz states that, in fact, America is not in any way a new world. Civilization on this continent is as old as anywhere on Earth. According to the scholars that she mentions and documents, domestication of plants took place around the world at roughly the same time. Around 8500 BC, humans developed agriculture in 7 different places around the planet. 2 river valleys in China, along the Nile, in sub-Saharan Africa, in the Tigris-Euphrates region of the Middle East, and in 3 different places in the supposedly New World, all at the same time. These 3 places would be in the Andes in South America, in the Central Valley of Mexico, and in Eastern North America. People have been here, settled here, farming here, as long as they have been farming anywhere on Earth. According to the seed records, humans have been planting corn. They started planting corn in Mexico about 10,000 years ago. Perhaps 1,000 years later, by that moment, the practice had spread across both continents, all the way from the southern tip of South America up to Alaska, and from ocean to ocean, people were planting corn. And corn is the only grain that doesn't grow in the wild. It must be cultivated by people. There is evidence that people were growing and trading it throughout the Western Hemisphere 9,000 years ago. There are trade routes and genetic codes that crisscrossed the continents. It's difficult to say, but Dunbar Ortiz puts the population of the Western Hemisphere in the 15th century at around 100 million, perhaps with 40 million of those people in North America. 40 million. At the same time, the population of Europe, from Spain to Russia, was about 50 million. So roughly similar populations on land masses of roughly similar size. Again, in the 15th century, just before Columbus landed, North America was as populated as Europe. That certainly is the opposite of what we were taught. And was it a wilderness? Well, no, actually, it wasn't here. 17th century English writers commented frequently on what they saw here, and they called it curated, a park-like environment. Really, park-like. Up and down the East Coast, native peoples had cultivated the land. The Massachusetts people practiced controlled burning and clearing of undergrowth to create open fields where they could plant crops. They did not domesticate cattle, but they actively managed the wildlife around them. By burning the undergrowth, they created deer parks. These were open fields where deer would come to nibble on the new plants and they could be hunted. The indigenous people of the Northeast were not nomads. They were farmers and herders. They lived in established settlements connected by roads and paths in a complex network. They practiced surgery, dentistry, and herbal medicine. They cooperated. They developed forms of government. And when conflicts broke out, they engaged in ritual warfare that resulted in actually relatively few casualties. For example, when the Six Nations came together and formed what was known for a long time as the Iroquois Confederacy, they agreed on a form of participatory democracy that was based on an understanding they called the Great Law of Peace. Today, the Iroquois are better known as the Haudenosaunee people, and Oren Lyons, the modern keeper of the Great Law, characterizes it this way. The first principle is peace. The second principle, equity, justice for the people. And third, the power of good minds, a collective power to be of one mind, unity. And the process of discussion, putting aside warfare as a method of reaching decisions and using the intellect, unquote. And this great law of peace was known to the English colonists who lived near the Haudenosaunee. In fact, Benjamin Franklin himself printed copies of it, and he used it as an inspiration for the US Constitution. The Haudenosaunee Confederacy dates back to the year 1142. It is documented as the oldest living participatory democracy on planet Earth. So uncivilized, no. Savages, no. In fact, it is documented now that it was the English who became the first American settlers who started and escalated the violence that happened here. They brought with them brutal attitudes and practices, like scalping, that they had invented, that they had used to subjugate the Irish just a few decades earlier. So let's go back to the story of Squaw Sachem, alone in her grief in 1637. What were her choices? Her eldest son had already given away Charlestown, and she herself had already traded tracts of land that would become the town of Concord in return for food. Now the English came back, asking for more, and with them a man named Edward Gibbons. Gibbons had served in the local militia under Captain John Underhill, and Underhill had led the charge a few months earlier on a village of Pequot Indians near what is now Mystic, Connecticut. There, Underhill and his men committed barbarous acts on people of all ages and genders and burned the village to the ground. The few natives who survived were captured and became enslaved. Most likely, Squaw Sachem knew all about what Gibbons and Underhill had done. And so she knew the type of men they were, the kind of warfare they practiced, and what they intended for her people. So she had no choice. On August 1st, 1637, Squaw Sachem signed a document that in exchange for 21 coats, some wampum, and 3 bushels of corn, deeded all of her remaining land, including what would become Watertown, Cambridge, Malden, and Melrose, to a group of Englishmen, among them Edward Gibbons. A year later, a small parcel of that land pops up in a record of Charlestown land holdings. According to local historian James Bennett, that record describes the property of someone called Richard Spragg in this way. Quote, 60 acres of land by estimation, more or less, situated in Pond Field, bounded on the one side by Ralph Spragg, on the northeast by L Pond, and the river that comes through the meadow into L Pond, and on the northwest by the Common, unquote. Based on that description, Bennett contends that this very parcel of land was this one here. Bill, can you put up the map slide, please? Now, people at home can look at it a bit closer than here, but you'll see that L Pond is at the top, and below it, running right through the middle, is Emerson Street. And smack dab in the middle of Emerson Street is this church. That's a modern Google Maps it's superimposed on.
Reverend Suzanne, we can't actually see the graphic online.
Well, thank you for letting us know. That's important. I'm sure Bill can fix that. I know, I'm always pushing them to do more and more. It's not easy. But I really thought this map was so important that we look at today in worship. So the pond, and below it, the pond field. Bennett thinks that this area this pond field is the first mention that we have in English of the land that became Melrose. The words pond field can be today seen in the center of the Melrose city seal. This description also contains the first instance of the name El Pond, our oldest place name still in use in Melrose. And most critically, this listing contains an implicit acknowledgement that this land had belonged to the Massachusetts tribe. How does Bennett know that?
Reverend Suzanne, now we can see the map, but we may have lost your audio.
(1638) land record, our earliest one that we have, it becomes really obvious that the English invaders almost always occupied lands that they called field or meadow because they were already cleared. The English could tell that the lots had been cultivated previously, prepared by other humans for easy habitation. In this case, pond field had been created next to a pond full of fish, like shad and alewife, the fish that regularly migrated up the Mystic by way of El Pond Brook. Can the folks at home hear me? Good.
Yes, we can now.
Great, thank you. So to me, this is just really amazing stuff. After all, it was less than a year ago that we started to do a regular land acknowledgement here as part of our worship service. And I remember thinking, I don't think we are ever going to know much at all about the history of this land where our church is. We'll never know who lived and died here, who fished and hunted here, how this land came to pass from native people to white settlers. And now, less than a year later, the story unfolds. There's documentation. Squaw Sachem and Edward Gibbons and Richard Sprague, the story of our land, which is still, by rights, their land. Because a contract that's signed under duress cannot stand, it's not legally binding. Can you imagine the duress that Squaw Sachem was suffering on that day? She was facing starvation, disease, total obliteration of her people. It's hard to imagine any greater duress than that. So what does that mean for us? Well, I think what we need is to sit with that for a good long time and let it sink in. Another myth that we were taught was that Native people had disappeared, but that's also a lie. Today, there are more than 5 million people of Native descent in the US, in 574 federally recognized tribes. I was surprised to find out that there are 326 reservations in the US covering as much land as the state of Idaho. The largest, the Navajo Nation, is roughly the same size as West Virginia. And there are 12 more that are larger than Rhode Island. I never heard of them, 12, bigger than Rhode Island. Here in Massachusetts, most Native people assimilated into the settler culture. Today, there are 6 groups of Native people recognized by the state. 4 are Wampanoag or Wampanoag people, centered mostly around Mashpee on Cape Cod. 2 are Nipmuc groups, who trace their lineage to people from more of the interior of the state, near Worcester and further west. These groups together total about 3,000 people today. Most of them are Wampanoag. The Massachusetts language used in so many of our coastal place names died out in the early 19th century, but now, surprisingly, is making a comeback. Thanks to linguist and MacArthur genius, Jesse Littledoe Bird, the Wampanoag, who speak a dialect of Massachusetts, are rediscovering their language. Today, there are about 500 people of varying levels of fluency. One easy way that you can support the remaining 3,000 people in our state is simply to go to the website of the Massachusetts Indigenous Legislative Agenda, that mouthful that I say every week. It's maindigenousagenda.org. All you have to do is put in your name and address, and the website auto-fills the text of an email, which will be sent directly to your state representatives on Beacon Hill. It's so easy. The website does all the work. It's literally 10 seconds, and you ask your state reps directly to support key legislation in 5 priority areas: celebrating and teaching Native culture and heritage in our schools, improving educational outcomes for Native students, establishing Indigenous Peoples Day across the state, protecting heritage artifacts and grave sites, and prohibiting Native American sports team mascots, logos, and nicknames in our public schools. Those are the 5 priorities currently. All of these bills are in the State House, and they need your support. Does this kind of organizing work? Well, yes, actually. Last year in January 2021, Governor Baker signed a bill calling for the creation of a new state flag and seal to replace the current one, which features insulting imagery. So that is proof that this agenda and the organizing behind it is actually working. Proof that when we listen to Native requests, we can make change that matters, change that improves the quality of life for these 3,000 people who are still here, still living with us in our state, still working to reclaim their culture, their language, their heritage, and their dignity. The very least we can do is to stop insulting them. I am stunned by the story of Squaw Sachem, Queen of Massachusetts. In the span of 1 generation, her people went from thousands to less than 40. And she had to give away everything she owned in exchange for winter coats and corn. We cannot change the past. What happened here definitely happened. But we can speak the truth about it. We can acknowledge and remember how this land changed hands under duress, under extreme duress. Not only from disease, but also from violence. Violence that was one-sided, targeted, and intentional. This is the truth of our inheritance, and it is no longer hidden to us. When we hold this truth and we speak it, we honor those who came before, the ancestors who farmed here, the people who were lost, and their descendants who remain. We honor them. When we remember, we help to heal the fabric of life itself, that invisible network of beings and creatures who sustain life, both in the past and out into the future. What we of our 7 principles call the interdependent web. When we speak the truth and remember and reach out in relationship, we help to heal that web. We honor cultures that knew and held great insight and wisdom into life here and life everywhere. When we remember and honor, we work to make amends. And we will work to make amends however that path unfolds. I end with a prayer. Squaw Sachem, Queen of the Massachusetts, in your mercy, however and wherever you exist today, in being, in spirit, or in memory, we honor you. We honor your great loss. We honor your great resilience. Please help us to be good stewards of your land and of your legacy. Amen. Please join with Tara on the video and Jenny in person in our closing hymn, Our World is One World. Okay. People here can look it up. It's 1:34. We'll wait for the music.
which is one affects us all. The seas that wash us round about, the clouds that cover us, the rains that fall. Our world is one world. The thoughts we think affect us all. The way we build our attitudes with love or hate make a bridge or wall. Our world is one world. Its ways of wealth affect us all. The way we spend, the way we share, who are the rich or poor, who stand or fall. Our world is one world, just like a ship that bears us all, where fear and greed make many walls, but where our hearts can hear a different call.
Please, if you would, remain standing and join me. Join me in the chalice extinguishing words. We extinguish the flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Amen.